Perak Eluhein Halokin Daf Yud Zayin, sponsored the Refuah Shlema for Rina Bas Rachel. Rav states one who eats produce before separating Meiser Ani, the tithe for the poor, is liable to lashes. Meiser Ani is a form of charity. One legally poor can claim monetary rights to it, but by the same token can sell or give it to anybody or eat it anywhere. Rav teaches despite this it is biblically tevel before tithing. One who consumes it is liable to lashes. A proof. The term bisharecha appears in two contexts. Concerning Meiser Sheni, the verse states, Lo sucha lecho bisharecha. You may not eat it locally, only in Yerushalayim. A verse concerning Meiser Ani states, V'achlu bisharecha v'saveyu. The similarity in terms applies the lo sucha, do not eat, to the Meiser Ani before tithing. Gemara brings a Tanaic dispute. If one is required to separate Meiser Ani from Demai, questionably tithed produce, purchased from an Amoritz, to clarify the biblical status of Meiser Ani. Rabbi Eliezer holds one is not required even to designate Meiser Ani of Demai because it is purely a monetary obligation, in this case belonging to the owner. The burden of proof is on the poor to determine the Amoritz did not separate the Meiser Ani. Chachamim hold he must designate it because it is questionable teva, but not separate it because perhaps already separated by the Amoritz. A refutation. Abaye answers, even Rabbi Eliezer agrees, not tithed, it is prohibited biblically. However, he holds the Amoritz will separate Meiser Ani to avoid the tevel prohibition, and then consume it himself. He is not as concerned about violating financial obligations as prohibitions. The Rabbanan hold it cannot be assumed they troubled themselves to separate it. Unaware designation suffices. Gemara discusses the dispute, Rabbi Shimon the Rabbanan in the Mishnah, as to the amount of tevel one must eat to be liable. Rabbi Bibi explains, Rabbi Shimon holds one is liable to lashes for a whole wheat kernel, but for flour is liable only for consuming a kazayas. Rabbi Yirmiyah explains, Rabbi Shimon holds one is liable for consuming a kazayas for an inadvertent violation, but for an intentional violation for consuming any amount, even flour. Although from the Mishnah it appears he disputes only the consumption of whole grains, in fact he disputes flour as well. He argues the Rabbanan should at least admit one is liable for consuming a whole grain, a precedent found in living creatures. However, they argue the significance of a bria applies only to living creatures. Now we move on to a new Mishnah. This Mishnah lists other prohibitions punishable by lashes. 1. Even a Kohen who eats bikurim, first fruits, before their owner recites the prescribed verses, is liable to lashes. The Gemara states this follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Chachamim disagree. They hold only their placement before the altar is required before consumption, not to incur lashes. The Gemara brings a brisa that indicates Rabbi Shimon follows the opinion of his Rebbe. A verse states, Lo sucha lecho bisharecha masa de gancha v'siroshcha v'yitzarecha uvcharois bekorcha v'tzoynecha v'chon nedorecha asher tidor v'didvosecha v'sumas yadecha. The last case of the verse, Trumas Yadecha, refers to Bikurim. It states elsewhere, Hatenem Yadecha. The Kohen takes the basket from his hand, similar to Trumas Yadecha. The verse prohibits eating Bikurim. The Brisa argues it cannot prohibit eating them outside Yerushalayim. That is derived from Meiser Sheni. Therefore, it prohibits their consumption before reciting the verses. Rava questions the derivation of Bikurim and the other prohibitions of that verse. Question. The Brisa assumes the laws of Bikurim are more stringent than Meiser Sheni because their consumption is permitted only to Kohanim. However, Meiser Sheni is prohibited to an onen, whereas Bikurim, according to Rabbi Shimon, is permitted. Number 1. Nidvosecha refers to a toda ushlamim generally brought as voluntary offerings. A prohibition to consume them outside Yerushalayim is derived from Meiser Sheni. The verse prohibits their consumption before the blood service. They are more stringent than Meiser Sheni because blood and sacrificial parts are placed on the altar. Rava argues Meiser Sheni is more stringent, redeemed only with minted coins, whereas these offerings are redeemed with anything of value. Number 2, Bechorecha teaches a non-Kohen who consumes it even after the blood service is liable. The prohibition to consume outside Yerushalayim is derived from Meiser Sheni, and consumption not before the blood service is derived from Todu Shlamim. Rava argues Meiser is more stringent, redeemed only by a minted coin. Todu Shlamim, although not sanctified from birth as Bechor, we require leaning, libations, and waving of the breast and thigh, not required for a Bechor. Number 3, Bekorcha v'tzoynecha, referred to Chatas v'Yashim. Consumption prohibited outside Yerushalayim is derived from Meiser Sheni. Consumption only after the blood service is derived from Todu Shlamim. Consumption for a non-Kohen even after the blood service is derived from Bechor. Therefore, these were mentioned to prohibit even eating them even for a Kohen outside the temple courtyard. Rava argues, although Chatas and Asham are Kachei Kachim, they are not sacred from birth as Bechor. Number 4, Nidarecha refers to Ola, consumption prohibited outside Yerushalayim, derived from Meiser Sheni. Consumption prohibited before the blood service is derived from Todu Shlamim. Consumption of a non-Kohen prohibited after blood service is derived from Bechor. Consumption prohibited outside the temple courtyard derived from Chatas and Asham. Therefore, the verse prohibits consumption even after the blood service in the courtyard. Rava argues, although an Ola is not consumed, the Chatas and Asham atone, and all other sacrifices are subject to 2 consumptions. Although Rava refuted all Rabbi Shimon's Kal V'chomer, he acknowledges his ingenious method of exposition, reversing the order of the verses' laws to learn one from the other. If you're enjoying Daf 5, please click on the link below, subscribe, and become a sponsor. Thank you.